Hey guys, Sam back with you here. We're mid-morning here. And I had a request. This is December 7th, I should note. So I had a request for Cardano. If you're not familiar with this coin, Cardano, its symbol's ADA. I mean, this is a major cryptocurrency. You know, it's my base level here is 50 or higher, so we're at 66. Huge market cap, three billion. And, you know, you can always come here. I always encourage you, if you're considering to trade a coin that you're not familiar with, do a little digging, understand what they're about, understand why it's moving, what's going on within the community. This is a great resource here. You can come here and at least get a snapshot, do a little bit of fundamental analysis so you understand at least what it's about. And if the coin is moving, maybe understand why it's moving. So, meets our basic here. We come over to the exchanges. There's almost all of the trading is in Bitcoin, so you can see here. So, and Bittrex is doing all the trading here. So, Bitcoin, 88 to Bitcoin, vast majority of that is well, almost all of it is Bitcoin. There's a little bit of Ethereum as well in there as well. So here's the coin. So it's been through this major pump here, right? And now we're correcting that. So this is the count that I have on it, but let's just back up a little bit, right? So you can see this in context. So here, right? So it's a relatively new coin. So here's the, this is why I don't trade ICOs. Here, there's the insanity of the when it hits Bittrex, and then we go into the long base building, and then we get the launch. So let's open this up. Keep in mind you got to get some context. So when you're here, let me get this to pop for me. Oh, I guess I've got to get that off. Okay, there we go. So now you look at that and you go, wow, this thing is really moving, but you got to keep some context here. So this is the count that we've had this on for a while, and we did get a trade in here. I can tell you, I had no idea it was going to pump like that and got out, in hindsight, way too early. But it's we had a nice little trade. But nonetheless, so here you get a very funky little impulsive structure to start this, right? So here's our Vegas wave. I'm on the 4-hour. So we get a funky little 1, 2. Then we get a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 into our 3. Shallow 4. Again, I'm on a 4-hour, so you're not going to see the detail. But I get my 1 wave here. Given I've got a 1, looking for a 2, I'm just going to retrace the entire thing, looking to establish my working pivots. So that, we know a 2 wave can go as deep anywhere from the 50 to the 786. So I'm looking at that, that I can see a couple of things there. Of course, I would want to check the relationship between the A wave and the B wave to help validate that pivot, if I can get my tool here. So here's my A wave to my B wave. I got that right on there, and you can see I'm off just a little bit. You can see that we very close to being spot on, if I get it right there. Yeah, so we go through by a tick. So we've got a good solid relationship here. It would appear from A wave projected from the B wave down to the C wave. We're right in one of those little hot boxes that you'd want to draw. So this is a common area for the ABC relationship, particularly if it's a 2 wave between the 100 and the 786. So that's not uncommon if you were looking at your oscillators back then. So here's the RSI. So you're getting a little double bottom here, and then it starts to move higher. So that's where these can be helpful. I don't feature them a lot because there's just too much reliance on oscillators. But there's a good opportunity there, and then you can see the volume. That's the OBV. You can see that start to pump here. So all good signs that potentially we've got a good 1-2, right? Well, there's absolutely no way to know that that's coming, right? But so it's just insane. So now that we've experienced that, right? So we've gone two and through. So here's the algo target. So people like me that were took profit way too early, had no idea. But there's no that. We get our expectations get so distorted in crypto when things like are happening in Bitcoin today. That's a nice little trade. If you're a swing trader, nothing wrong with that trade. That's a nice little trade, right? From your little technical pivot down here to your first target, that's a nice solid trade. Nothing to be, in hindsight, you can always go back and say, oh man, I wish language that you want to avoid as a trader. If you ever catch yourself, you want to hear it and stop it. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. That will just eat you alive. It's just you can't change it. You coulda, but you didn't. So move on. Next trade. Where are we now? What's happening now? Well, okay, you didn't catch all that. I didn't catch that. So what can we do with it now? What's happening now? Well, there's crypto, right? That's why we're in crypto, because that kind of just insanity can happen, right? So the percentage return off of that is outrageous. But again, that's why we're trading crypto. So, looking at that, so you go, okay, well, all right. So I've seen this kind of spiking action before. I don't love to see that. It's nice if you catch a move like that and you ring the bell and you bank some coin, but that's nice, but I don't like that technically. That volatility is not conducive to predictability as a trader. So I don't love it, but I've got members that are in this, that are interested in this coin. So per member request, we're going to analyze it and we'll take a look at it and see, well, is there anything that I can do with it now? And if I'm not in, given that, is it reasonable to think that we might be heading back up to challenge those highs? Perhaps that's a 1-2, and it would be hard not to call that a 3, at least at this point, if we're going to sustain this. Okay, so let's open this up, right? So we're so, you can't even do a fib projection on that. It's so far, but we can see the very big pump, and now I'm on a 4-hour chart, and pretty quickly we've gave back more than half of it. So just in basic Elliott wave, or just Fibonacci trading, I'm going to go to from Elliott, I'm going to pull from my 2 low. Right, so if you were just coming at it as a fib trader, you'd pull from your absolute low. But I'm going to pull from the 2 low, because we still have the potential for this, as long as this wave 1 isn't violated, that we've got a 1-2 gigantic 3, and now we're correcting to put in a 4. So I'm going to pull from this pivot here. I know they were good. I know that was a technical pivot. Remember, we did the ABC, and we had that nice little pocket there where we drew that box, but tiny little box, in relatively speaking now, but that was the 786 and 100% of the 1 wave. Right, so now we're this is very deep, so this is unusual. So thus I don't love this as a long, because statistically we know that fourth waves are more typically between the 38 and the 23, really. So, but this would be, if you were going to give it a lot of range for a fourth, that's typically where you're going to find it more precisely between the 38 and the 50. When you're to and through the 618 and you're pushing the 785, I question whether or not we have. It happens, but is that still a 4? Well, you can make the case, right? You can make the case that that's a 4 because we haven't overlapped the 1, and we clearly have an impulsive move here. That's the 3. So what can we do with it? Well, interestingly, it certainly appears to be trading technically, right? We've got a good technical pivot here. Here's a high. Where do we go for the A, right? Right into the sweet spot, right into that 61865 box, and then we get the reaction up, and we look like we've got a little A, B, C, given that little pop here, which is a new high for a B. So we do have a 3-wave structure there for that B. So I would just, as I would with any chart, just regardless of how extreme the move was, pull from that swing low to the length of the A wave, and I'm looking for any significance in that pivot for the B wave. Well, this is not an uncommon spot between the 50 and the 618 on that side. So I've got potentially here. So here's my internal retracement right where I would expect it. Then I get my ABC. We're in between the 50 and the 618. So that's certainly valid. Here's the algo target down here. Now this is what's interesting. So look where the algo target is from their sell, right? From the sell at the 50, their target lines up exactly with the 786 of the swing low to the swing high. So when I see that kind of confluence, then that gets my attention. So maybe this is our target. We'd stay as a valid impulse wave because we don't overlap the 1, assuming we're going to pivot here, and we don't know that we're even going to get there. But that's a reasonable expectation. So that's the kind of thing that I would alarm and make note of it. But also, right, remember to always look left on your chart. So there's a little pivot there that might come into play, prior resistance potentially offering some support. Look what we've just hit. Here's the Vegas wave, which is it's a little distorted here. The 233, we don't have, it's a new enough coin on a 4-hour. We don't really have enough data But, you know, it's here. That's in play. There's our prior swing high. Does not surprise me at all that that's offering a little support. Now, whether it holds or not remains to be seen. But I've got to, you know, this is an area I want to pay attention to. Because if I get a reaction off of that, then, you know, I wouldn't be a buyer there myself. I wouldn't be trying to pick the low. But if I do get a reaction off of that, I would certainly want to consider that. Right, so if I can establish this as a hard pivot, I would know, well, one, it's a very technical pivot because I've got a nice confluence zone here. I know algos are likely to take their profit there, and then potentially we get some sort of reaction off of that. And if we get a decent, you know, I'm on a 4-hour, right? So if I went down to the 1 hour, if I saw I had good subdivision, like we had down here, if I had a 5-wave structure to tell me potentially I've got a 1-wave in of what would be the beginning of the 5th, if we're indeed going to go that high, well, then I'd be waiting for my 2. So then I would be able to enter it with a little bit less risk. I know where I'm wrong. Right, so I could enter that with a reasonable amount of risk, knowing that my potential upside is enormous. Because if we're going to go up, and even if we just go up and challenge that high, that's, you know, that would be a hell of a trade. So to me, that there's not a buy there just yet because this is just too extreme, too extreme for me, for me to try and chase that. I mean, you could make the case that you could be a buyer there with a small amount, right, with a relatively tight stop. You know, I wouldn't go that far down. I wouldn't give it that much room. If I were going to be a buyer, I would allow for maybe a little front run, and I wouldn't be too far below it with my stop. Why take the risk? Why, you know, just no telling where that ultimately ends up. For all we know, this thing, you know, just keeps going, and you know, we invalidate the whole thing. We're back down here starting the whole thing over. You just don't know. But I wouldn't be surprised if we get a reaction there. So that's for people that are looking for a fresh long in that. You know, that would be your first place to take a little bite at it. And then if you wanted to add up again, let it react and then look for some sort of impulsive structure and then for a pullback. Now, if I take this, open this up, given that we've got 3 pivots coming down, I'm definitely going to want to put some median lines on that. So I'd go out to here. Well, that doesn't do much for me, right? It's too steep. So I would go to my alternates and I'd come over here and I'd go, okay, well, let's check the shift. Okay, interesting. Let's go to the modified shift. Okay, now that's definitely getting more interesting. So I've got an expectation for potentially a reaction here at or near the median line. So given that, you know, if we're going to, so I've got my Vegas wave here. I've got my target down here. Now, if we're going to go through that, if we're going to, you know, just continue to come down here and see a reaction, then we'd be looking at what we'll often find median line trading principle number 3. If we don't pivot exactly on the median line, it will swing back and forth around it before it makes a decision. You know, either buyers or sellers win out, and we head back up. So if we're going to come down here, this would not be too far from that median line for me to take that off and not consider, because the first thing I'd want to see what happens when we get to to this parallel, to the upper parallel to a downward sloping median line. I would want to see, do I get a reaction there? And that might be where you get the setup for the 2-wave, right? So if you come down here, that would be the buy. Now you're looking for this reaction here. Now, of course, you're going to have to fight through all of this resistance, and that would be a likely place to expect it. But if you bought here and are looking at that, well, there's a hell of a trade. There's a hell of a trade. And if it's going to stay in an Elliott structure, then you're going to get your 4, and then you're off for your 5. So, and then we're back to challenging these highs. So that would be the roadmap that you would hope to see. No idea whether that plays. And of course, if you get that reaction here, then you're going to redraw. So then you're drawing your median lines from the next 2 hard pivots to see, are they technical, and can they help you with market geometry if the market starts to move that direction? I wouldn't take the downsloping off though until we break here. Then I might even keep it somewhere as a reference to get it before I drew a new one based off of these 3 pivots, assuming we get 3 pivots there. We don't know. For all we know, it does that. We just don't know. So I mean, again, that's trading. You don't know. It's just potential. It's just possible roadmap there based on what we've seen here. But the depth of that correction, well, it's worth pausing on that. But that would be how, if I were going to trade this, and I'm not saying that I am, but if you're interested, you love the project, at least take a look at it technically and see where it makes sense to look for what I'm always looking for, which is a low risk entry with a reasonable amount of risk. So if I get stopped out, it's not going to hurt me. Listen, today I took plenty of stops, but they're all small. We're getting crushed. Lots of things were just blown out today if you were spread against Bitcoin, right? How could it not be? Very few were not. Jabs. Take the jab. Take the jab. You're not going to knock me out because I'm not going to put myself in a position where you can knock me out. All right? Okay, guys. I'll wrap it there.